Welcome back to CS with Nawab, and let's begin February-March 2026 15 marker solution. This is an interesting problem and it's not too difficult, so let's jump into it. Okay, question is saying that a program is required to enable voting in class surveys, for example, to find the most popular smartphone. 1D array options is used to store between 2 and 12 options. Okay. And then 1D array votes is used to store the votes between 2 to 1000 users. Okay, so let's just visualize it first. This is a visualization that I have. So we have options array here, which will have a maximum of 12 options, and the user can choose initially, uh, or the sector of this survey can choose how many options would they give. So right now I'm going with 4 options. Okay. Then in the next part, we have the array votes, which is used to store the votes of between 2 and 1000 users. So again, we can choose the number of users we would want to vote into this survey. And for now, I'm choosing a total of 100 people, but it can go all the way till 1000. Okay, so this will store the votes of the people between 2 and 1000. Then there's another 1D array called vote count, which is used to store the number of votes for each of the options. The array index represents the option number. So let's pause here and let's see what we have to do. In the vote count, against this index, which is acting as the index to the option number. So let's see, we have 1 here, and what it means basically that all the people who have voted for this one, and one is basically Samsung here, right? Then we have index 2 here in vote count, and these are all the people who have voted for 2, and 2 is basically Redmi, like this. Then we have 3 here, and these are all the people who have voted for 3, and 3 is Apple, so on and so forth. And then this is 4, and we're going to look for all the 4s in the votes array, and 4 is Google. Then we'll have a total count of each of these options, and out of 100, this is what I've written randomly, so 20, 40, 25, and 15. So the question says that we have to first initialize the arrays, then we have to input and validate the number of options and the number of voters. So whenever validate is written, that means we have to use some sort of a conditional loop, which is while or repeat until. Okay, with this done, then they're saying input each of the required options and store them in the array options, just like we've done here. So it would be something like this. We'll allow the user to pick this many values and then we'll do the voting on it. Display the list of options for each voter and allow each voter to input their preferred option. So all the voters would be able to see Samsung, Redmi, Apple, and Google, and then all of them would be able to place one vote for one of these options. Then we have to store that in the votes array, just like we've done here. Whatever vote they have against each user will store the number. Then the question is saying once all the votes have been input, count the number of voters who chose each option and find the most popular and least popular options. So like we discussed, we'll have the counts here, and then we'll simply do the maximum and minimum algorithm. And since the maximum is sitting at index 2, so we go to index 2 in options, and that is Redmi. Similarly, we have 4 as minimum, and when we go to 4, 4 is Google. So this is from the previous example. I'll just change this to Redmi is the most popular one, and then we can say that Google is the least popular one, voted by 15. That's it. That's the question. And then they're saying you do not need to identify if 2 or more options have the same value for popular or least popular. Let's begin. Okay, first of all, we have to input and validate the options, and then we have to see how we can move forward. All right, first of all, we have to initialize all the arrays before they are used. So options will have 12 options exactly. Votes will have up to 1000 values, and then vote count will again have 12 options because we are allowing a maximum of 12 options. So only 12 options would be voted against. So for I 1 to 12, something like this, 1 to 12, and options index I will make it empty string, and then vote count index I will be set to 0. So all of these would be initially 0 like this, and then all of these would be empty like this, but I'll just reset it for now. like this. Okay, then in the next part we have to initialize the next array, which is the array called votes up to 1000 members. So for j 1 to 1000, votes index j set to all to 0, and then we have next j here. All right, then in the next part they're saying input each of the required options and store them in the array options. Very simple. So before we do that, we have to first validate the options and voters. So maximum options are 12 and maximum votes allowed are 1000 users or voters. So we have to use a conditional loop. Let's use repeat until number of options is greater than equal to 2 and number of options is less than equal to 12. And we'll do the same thing for users as well. We won't do it in the same loop. Let's do it separately so the user does not have to re-input both values every time. And I'll just change it to number of voters and number of voters here, and this should be between 2 to 1000 like this. Okay, now in the repeat option we'll ask the user to enter options, or the admin who is setting up the survey enter total number of options, which is between 2 to 12, and then we'll take input into num options like this. Simple enough. We do the same thing, so we do output enter total number of voters, which is between 2 to 1000, and again we take input into num voters like this. Simple. Okay, once we're done with this, now they're saying display the list of options for each voter and then allow each voter to input their preferred option. Okay, so we are going to just show all the options to the voter. So I'll just write a simple for loop for, or well, let's just print first output all voting options, and then let's print all the options. So I'll just say for I 1 to number of options. Let's say right now we're assuming 4, that user will input 4, so 1, and then we can output. And in fact we have to take input into the array options, yes, not output, input. So first let's ask the user to enter, I'll just get rid of this, enter your option. We don't need to give any choices here, we're just assuming that the admin will know what to input, and then we'll input that into options index I like this. And then we do next I. That's it. So this will allow us to input the options in the array. Again, assuming 4 options. So we have Samsung, Redmi, Apple and Google, which have been inputted here, assuming. Okay, now in the next part of the question saying display the list of options for each voter and allow each voter to input their preferred option. Okay, so now we have to show the options to all the voters. So this is going to be outputted every time for the options that the user is going to input. Now we have to show the options to each voter. So we have to run a nested loop now. Okay, now the logic would be that let's say we have user number 1. So user number 1 should be able to see all of these. Then we have option number 2. User should be able to see all of these. Then option number 3. User number 3 should be able to see all these options. So we have to use a nested loop because we are repeating the same thing for multiple items in the array. So I'm going to write a nested for loop here. For I 1 to number of voters, which is going to be, we're assuming 100 for now, and for all the 100 voters I'm going to output this many options. So that is why we have the nested loop here. I'll just write for j 1 to number of options, and then I'm just going to output all the options. Output options index j like this, next j and next I. All right, so till this point what will happen is if the voter is number 1, so they're going to see all the options, which are going to be these 4 like we discussed. Then same for 2, same for 3, same for 4, same for 5, so on and so forth. So every user would be able to see all the available options in the voting Okay, now we have to allow the user to actually place a vote. Now, in order to place a vote, they must be allowed a choice, which should be between 1 to 4. In our case, 4 is the number of options that we allowed. And we have inputted that here, number of options. Right, so we'll do that. And we're going to ask the user to input the choice. And this should be done inside the repeat until, because they've again asked us to validate this input and store it in the array votes. Because we don't want the user to input 5 or 10 or 12 if the options are only 4. So we have to use the repeat until, let's call it choice is greater than equal to 1 and choice is less than equal to the number of options. Again, if the number of options are 4, so this loop will only work as long as the choices are between 1 to 4, which makes sense. And then we're going to ask the user to enter their choice between 1 to 1 till, and that number would be number of options. So if we input 4 options, so it will output enter options from 1 to 4. If the admin set 10 options, so it will output enter options from 1 to 10. So this is what we are giving the choice to the user. Okay, once they have inputted this, now what we're going to do is we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to place that vote into our array. Now what did I do here? So if the user selected, let's say Samsung, so they input as option 1, so I'm going to go to the current index of my votes array and I'm going to put their vote there simply, and that is what I've done. Whatever choice they input, I simply go and I put it on the respective index. So first we'll have voter 1, then we'll have voter 2, then we'll have voter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth. So by the end of it, everybody would have casted at least one vote, and then for every user, their vote would be stored in the respective index in the array all the way till 100 or 1000, whatever the count that we have chosen. Now, the most important part of this question is the vote count. Next part, they're saying that once all the votes have been input and count, so then we have to count the number of votes who chose an option and find the most and least popular options. Okay, in order to do this, we simply have to go in the vote count array and then we have to pick this index and we have to just count against this index. Like I said, that in the vote count array, we are going to count the number of votes for each of the options. And they said that the array index represents the option number, right? So if this index is 1, basically it is representing option 1, which is Samsung. And then we have to count how many people voted for Samsung, which is option number 1. Then when we are at index 2 is Redmi. So we are going to count how many people voted for option number 2. So there are two ways. One way is to do a linear search, but that would get a bit tricky. So the easier way is just to simply pick the value of this index and then simply increment the value in the array. By that, what I mean is that we'll pick this value, which is at index 1 we have 2, and then I'm going to pick this value 2 and I'm going to add it at the index 2 of my vote count array like this. So let's assume these are all set to 1 for now, or I'm sorry, 0. So I get 2 here. I'll go to index 2 and I'll increment it by 1 because somebody has voted for option number 2, which is Redmi. Okay, then I go to the second user vote, that is 4. So I'll go to index 4 and I'll increment the value by 1 because somebody chose 4. Then somebody chose 1, so I'll increment the index 1. Somebody chose 2. Okay, so I'll go to index 2 and I'll add 1 here, so this becomes 2. Then somebody inputted 4, so I'll go to 4 and I'll make this 2. And if we keep on doing this, by the end we'll have some values for all the 100 users and it might look something like this. This is what we're going for. Now, how do we do this in code? It's very simple. We are just going to again go through the values. So for all the number of voters that we have, let's say we have 100 right now out of 1000. So we'll put a loop for I want to number of voters. Let's assume that's 100. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to pick the index from the current votes array. Now what does this mean? So current votes array, it's 2, and question said that this is the index that we have to take into account. So we'll go to index 2 of vote count and we'll increment this value by 1. Very simple. So I'll literally just use this index into my vote count array. I'll do vote count index, and I'll do simply vote count index plus 1. This is the most important part of the question. Again, what did I do? I went to the index 1 of my votes array, let's say. So at votes 1 we have 2 here, and now it means on the index 2 of my vote count array I'm going to increment the value by 1 because somebody voted for option 2, which is Redmi. This is the connection that you have to make. Next time we have option 4, so I'll go to index 4, I'll increment the value by 1, which means somebody voted for Google, so on and so forth. So I'm getting each value from the votes array, and then I'll use it as an index, and then I'll go to that index and I'll simply increment the number of votes by 1. And we keep on doing this for all the number of voters until we have something like this for all the users. Let's say 100 users, we have 100 votes. Now we simply have to find the max and min, which is very simple. So let's make the appropriate variables first. Let's call it the maximum popular, or maybe let's call them, let's call them maximum popular and minimum popular, or least or max, whatever you want to call them. And then we have the max votes. I'm just assuming that this is at index 1, and then minimum votes are also at index 1 of the vote count array. This is just an assumption that we're making instead of making a guess. Okay, so we're assuming that max and min both are set to this value 20, and I'm assuming that you guys know the rest. It's very simple and straightforward. We simply run a loop for I 2 to number of options. The reason I'm starting from 2 is because we are already setting the max and min to option at index 1, which is going to be 20. So we don't need to really compare 20 against itself. So we can start from index 2, or you can start from index 1. It's totally up to you. It doesn't make a difference. Okay, then we simply have to do the maximum minimum. So if the current vote count, or instead of writing vote count over and over again, I'll just simply assign it into a variable. Let's call it VC, or let's call it current, whatever you want to call it. So if the current vote count is greater than the maximum number of votes, which is the max votes, if that is the case, then I'm going to assign into max votes the current value of the vote count, and then I'll say that the maximum popular value is at index I. Okay, what did I do here? So again, I'm starting the maximum minimum from here. I compare it with in the next index. So 40, is 40 greater than 20? Yes. So I'm going to set the maximum popular to index 40. And which index did we find it on? We find it at index 2. We need this because we need to print the final option name as well, and that's what I'm doing. So since we found it at index 2, I'm storing that in this maximum population variable, or maximum, whatever you want to call it, max popular, because we would lose this index 2 next time when it goes to the next index of the array, which is 3. So we will lose this 2. So we're just creating a copy of the current loop variable. So copying loop variable value, so we can use it further to access the values. Okay, if that is not the case, else if your current vote count is less than the minimum votes, then what we'll do is we'll simply assign minimum votes, and it will get the value of VC, which is the current vote count, and then we'll do that minimum, or the least popular would also be at index I, and then we'll do end if. Same logic. So if we are at 20, so 40 is not less than 20, no, 25 is not less than 20, is 15 less than 20? Yes. So it becomes the minimum. And where did we find 15? We find it at index 4, which is stored in I, so we store it in a separate variable, minimum or the least popular one. Once all of this ends, we'll have 4 variables. We'll have max and we'll have min, 2 of these values, and then we'll have their indices values as well, at which index number we found them, 2 and 4. And then the question is saying that you have to output the most and least popular options as well as the number of voters who selected each of these options. So we have to print something like this. Redmi most popular voted by 40, Google least popular voted by 15. Now how do I get Redmi in Google? So that is the reason we stored the max pop and min pop indices basically. So we'll simply go to those indices. Now only the output remains. So in the output, we will output something like this. In this format, Redmi most popular voted by. So this would be output. Here we have to get the name. I'll get the name in a bit. And this would be most popular voted by, and here we have to get the count. Okay, now where is the name stored? The name would be at this index that we have in the options array. So I'll just write options index maximum popular, right? So where we found the maximum, which was on index 2. So at index 2 we have Redmi. So this will automatically get Redmi most popular voted by. Now we have to get the number of people who did this many votes. We already have this in max votes. So I'll bring it here and then output options, again minimum popular, which would be least popular voted by, and here we'll have minimum votes like this. So it would give us exactly this Redmi most popular voted by this, Google least popular voted by this. And with this, we are done with the whole question, February, March 26. The only thing that is left is to add comments, and everything else we have done, and you'll get full marks once you add the comments, and that's it.